Here's the thing everyone gets wrong about this song the second they hear that opening word repeated like a heartbeat. They think it's a hype track, a female empowerment anthem about a woman who's got everything: the bag, the jewelry, the man on a leash saying yes to their own power. And on the surface, sure, that's there. But listen again to what's actually being said yes to. Because by the end of this, the word that sounded like confidence in verse 1 sounds like something closer to surrender. Start with what everyone assumes. The track opens with command, eyes locked, an intimate moment turned into a challenge, and immediately the listener is primed to think this is about control. She's the one directing the scene. She's the one calling the shots. Then comes a line about being back on that time again, and casually, almost too casually, it slides past you. Back on that time. Not a new time. Not a first time. A returning. And right there, 30 seconds in, before the beat even fully drops, the song has already told you its real subject. This is not a story about desire. This is a story about relapse. Notice the tense work happening in that opening run. She says she'll forget him, and in the very next breath admits she's lying. Again, that word again is doing more structural work in this song than almost any other word in the entire lyric sheet. It shows up attached to being back, attached to trying, attached to lying, attached to sliding. Every single time something happens in this song, it's stamped with the word again, like a receipt. This isn't a woman describing a relationship. This is a woman describing a cycle. And she knows it. That's the part people miss. She's not naive about the pattern. She names it in real time. Said, I forget you. I'm lying again. That's not someone caught off guard by her own feelings. That's someone watching herself walk back into the exact same room she swore she'd leave, and narrating out loud as she does it. So already, in the first 60 seconds, you've got the tension that the rest of the song is going to spend circling, the language of dominance, telling other women to back off, declaring ownership, promising she'll make him hers again, layered directly on top of language that reveals she's the one who keeps getting pulled back in. She's not chasing him because she's weak. She's chasing him because the story she's telling herself is that this time is different. This time it'll stick. Even though, again, in every line is proof it never does. Now here's where the surface reading really starts to crack. Everyone hears the middle of the song, the luxury references, the designer bags, the jewelry, the trips, and assumes this is a flex, a materialistic brag about a rich man taking care of her. But listen to the framing around those lines. It's not presented as, look what I have. It's presented as, look what he'd give up for me. There's a line where she says if it came down to it, he'd hand over his very last dollar, his very last resource. And that's not a brag about money. That's a brag about devotion measured in money. Because money is the only currency this relationship seems fluent in. Watch how every gift, every designer name drop, every luxury brand mentioned isn't really about the object. It's a stand-in for a question she keeps asking without asking it directly. Does he still choose me? And the answer he gives, the one repeated word that becomes the title and the hook and the heartbeat of the whole song, is always the same. Okay, not I love you. Not always. Just, okay, that's the moment the entire song reorganizes itself in your head. If you're paying attention, the word okay isn't affection. It's compliance. It's the sound of someone agreeing rather than someone choosing. And she's built an entire anthem around a man's passive agreement and dressed it up as devotion. Whenever she asks him something, and remember, she says it's only ever one answer whenever she asks. He just says okay, over and over. That's not romance. That's someone who has learned exactly what to say to keep the peace, to keep the access, to keep whatever this relationship economy is running smoothly. And she knows this too on some level, because she frames it as almost transactional throughout. If his name carries weight, she'll give him luxury. If his game is sharp, she'll give him status. It reads like a loyalty program with sex and jewelry as the point system. That's not accidental. That's the second hidden layer of the song. Underneath the romance plot is an economic plot, where affection is metered out in direct exchange for performance. Now here's a detail almost nobody clocks on first listen, but once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The mention of a face tattoo. She says she wants to kiss it, wants to be near it. And on the surface, that's just intimacy just a woman fixated on a specific physical feature of a specific man. But a face tattoo is also, culturally, a signature. It's permanent. It's identity written on skin. So when she fixates on it, she's not just being affectionate. She's fixating on the one part of him that can't be undone, can't be walked back, can't be again. Everything else in this relationship is cyclical, reversible, repeatable. The breakups, the reconciliations, the promises to forget him that immediately get broken. But that tattoo is fixed. It's the one permanent thing in a song built entirely out of impermanence. She's drawn to the one part of him that mirrors the kind of commitment she keeps claiming to have and never actually gets. And then there's a line about resembling an ex if you squint hard enough. A joke on its face. Thrown away almost as filler. But structurally it's one of the most revealing lines in the whole song. Because she's not just competing with other women for his attention in the abstract. She's specifically aware that she occupies a slot, a category, a type. She looks like someone else if you round to 10, which is her own way of admitting she might not even be the specific person he wants. She might just be close enough to the shape of what he wants. That's a stunning thing to say inside a song that otherwise reads like total confidence. It's a crack in the armor for one bar. The bravado drops, and you get something closer to insecurity dressed up as a punchline. This is where the song structure becomes its meaning. It's not narrative in the traditional sense. Verse, rising action, resolution. It's circular. The hook repeats nearly unchanged 3 separate times, word for word, like a loop she can't escape. And that's the whole point. A song about breaking a cycle would move somewhere. This song doesn't move. It returns. Same hook. Same back on that time again. Same appeals to other women to step off. Same admission that she's lying about being over him. Structurally, the song enacts the exact psychological pattern it's describing. You're meant to notice, by the third time the hook rolls back around, that nothing has changed since the first time you heard it. That repetition isn't a lack of songwriting ambition. It's the entire argument of the song, delivered through form rather than lyric. Now, the middle stretch, where she doubles down on being reckless, not using protection, joking that it looks like they're trying for a baby, that's often read as just explicit shock value. A bit for the culture, nothing deeper. But hold up against everything we've just unpacked, and it becomes something sharper. It's the ultimate expression of back on that time again. Recklessness here isn't impulsiveness. It's nostalgia. It's trying to recreate the exact conditions of a past version of the relationship, down to the physical carelessness. Because carelessness was part of what made it feel real the first time. She's not just returning to him. She's trying to return to a specific era of them. And she's willing to risk consequences to get back there. That's the cycle metastasizing. It's no longer just emotional. It's now physical, material, potentially permanent in a way that mirrors that face tattoo again. Two people trying to manufacture permanence through recklessness, because neither of them trust the relationship to hold together through anything else. Let's talk about the twin line, because on the surface it sounds like the sweetest moment in the song, an offhand declaration that he's her other half, that she'd be lost without him. But look at where it's placed. It comes directly after she says she's riding with him till the end, and directly before a verse where she pivots into flexing about designer brands and threatening to replace him if another man is on her level. The tenderness doesn't get to breathe. It's immediately buried under transactional bravado again. That's not inconsistency in the songwriting. That's the emotional truth of the song. Genuine attachment and defensive bravado are stacked on top of each other, because she can't sit in the vulnerable version of this feeling for more than one line before she has to armor back up. The twin comment is the most honest moment in the entire song, and it gets swallowed almost instantly by everything she uses to protect herself from how honest it is. Here's the counterpoint worth taking seriously before we go further, because a good breakdown doesn't just cherry-pick the reading that fits. It tests itself. You could argue this whole song is simply a woman fully owning her sexuality and her material worth, unapologetically, and that reading the codependency angle onto it is projecting a sadder story onto what's actually just a celebration. And there's real support for that reading. The song is playful, funny even, self-aware in its bragging, clearly having fun with its own explicitness. Latto's broader catalog backs this up too. She's built a whole persona around confident, sexually forward, financially independent bars, refusing shame, refusing to perform respectability for anyone. So it's fair to say, maybe okay really is just a hype word, just a satisfying hook, and maybe we're overreading a party song. But here's why that reading doesn't fully hold once you sit with the details we've already found. A song that was purely about confidence wouldn't need to repeat again 7 separate times in its opening 30 seconds. A song about owning your worth wouldn't include an unprompted admission that she resembles someone else if you squint. A song about pure celebration wouldn't hinge its entire hook around a man's minimal, single-word agreement rather than his enthusiasm. Confidence and vulnerability aren't mutually exclusive. That's actually the whole point. This is a song where both are true at once. She is flexing. She is owning her body and her money and her power. And underneath every single flex is a woman circling back to a man who mostly just says, okay to her, because on some level, in this particular relationship, okay is the most she's been offered, and she's decided to call it enough. That's not a contradiction in the song. That's the actual subject of the song. Confidence as a coping mechanism for a cycle she can't quite break. Widen the lens for a second, because this isn't just true of one song or one artist. This is one of the most common emotional patterns in modern relationship dynamics, especially the ones built and broadcast in public, on social media, in music. The performance of "I'm over it" as a way of trying to make it true. People don't usually announce they're forgetting someone unless some part of them is worried they haven't. The loudest declarations of being done with someone are so often the clearest evidence that they're not. That's not a flaw specific to this artist or this song. That's just how people talk themselves into and out of relationships they know aren't fully healthy, but aren't ready to fully release either. The bravado is real. The attachment is also real. Neither one cancels the other. And that's what makes the final stretch of the song land so differently once you've tracked all of this. The ending pivots into a metaphor about codes, about gates, about being let through to something guarded. Framed as sexual, sure on the surface, but structurally it's the same theme dressed in new clothes. Access, permission, the idea that there's a code you have to know, a gate you have to get through, and she's the one who decides who gets let in. Except, and this is the final twist, by the end of the song, we've already watched her let the same person back in again after swearing she wouldn't. So even that final image of her as gatekeeper, the one deciding who's allowed access, is undercut by everything we already know. She's not actually gatekeeping against this particular person at all. The gate swings open for him every single time. No code required, because he was never really locked out. The gatekeeping is for everyone else. For him, the door was always unlocked, and the song about being back on that time again is proof of it. So bring it all the way back to the top, to that opening word that repeats like a pulse before a single other lyric even arrives. Everyone hears as a flex, as agreement, as a woman in total control saying yes on her own terms. But by the time the song has looped through its hook for the third identical time, you realize that word was never really hers to begin with. It's his word, the only word he gives her, and she's built an entire song, an entire identity, an entire performance of power around the fact that a man who mostly just complies is somehow still the one she keeps circling back to. The whole track is a woman narrating her own relapse in real time and calling it a comeback. That's the sharp line underneath all the jewelry and the bravado and the explicit bragging. This isn't a song about getting what you want. It's a song about convincing yourself that what you keep going back to is the same thing as what you want. And that's exactly why it opens the way it does. Not with a declaration, not with demand, but with a single word repeated 4 times in a row, like she's trying to convince herself before the song has even started that yes, this time, it's okay.